In this video, we are going to look at the new transfer rule that allows players to transfer multiple times. Previously, if you're not aware, players were allowed to transfer, if you like, undergraduate one time without any questions asked and not having to sit out. And then if they wanted to transfer a second time, they were required to submit like an appeal of why they need to, or a waiver to grant them the ability to transfer. And normally it would be like I want to return home to be with my family, or somebody's ill, or grandma needs me, or something like that. And then the NCAA decided we've got to really tighten this up. The schools complained and said, we don't want just free agency and kids going everywhere. We need to tighten this thing up because it's awful and it's ruining sports. So then NCAA did what the schools wanted, and they tightened it up, and they started cracking back on waivers. And sure enough, you had poor players complaining that they tried to transfer, and the mean NCAA had stopped it because they didn't grant their waiver. And oh my God. And what do you know? The schools that were impacted, 6 schools got together, or 6 states got together, if their kids were involved in those states, and they said, hey, we're going to file a lawsuit to say that you're restraining trade and kids should be allowed to multi-transfer, if you like. Now, my understanding was this was in a West Virginia federal court, and the judge came back and gave a 14-day temporary restraining order allowing kids to transfer without having to sit out. But then the day after that, the NCAA came out and said, yep, you can do that, but you're risking eligibility if after the 14 days we eventually win the lawsuit, if you like. And then the NCAA, as they always do, they caved basically, because they always lose these things, and it's a tough position to fight. And they've come up with a resolution saying they filed a joint motion that the current status quo will remain in effect until the end of the 2023-24 season. And this seems to have more of an impact on men's basketball. So certain players that transferred thinking that they would get a waiver and were denied are now eligible to play, if you like. And that's the ongoing impact. To be determined if this will be a long-term implemented rule. I suspect it will be, because like I say, the NCAA has a poor history on this, and I think they're done with it. I'd imagine they feel betrayed, because they were sort of cracking down on the waiver policy based on the schools saying they wanted to do that. And then, of course, the schools that lost out on that, like wanted players to come and were prevented having waivers going through. Of course, they arced up and had their, governors or states file lawsuits on their behalf. So I think the NCAA is going to say, no, we're out of this game. Transfer as much as you want. That's where I think it's going. Tell me if you think I'm wrong or right, but I think you'll definitely be allowed multiple transfers, in the near future, I would think. Obviously, I cover women's basketball, and I like listening to the press conferences, and Gino Auriemma and Jeff Walz, they gave their press conferences and had interesting takes on this, which I found very, very interesting. And they both were talking sort of the same language to a certain degree. So Walz, his take was basically, let the players transfer as much as they want. If they don't want to be here, then let them go. I don't give a damn. And then he sort of went on his rant about NIL. Nothing too bad, but basically saying NIL doesn't really impact, like, the top players get paid, but the majority don't. And then he sort of compared it to, like, the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, you'll see the quarterback on the billboard and a few star players, but the idea that all these players are going to get paid through NIL is a bit ridiculous. And that the NIL, basically the schools are made to go out to sort out these collectives and get it in place so that all the players can get paid. And it's the first thing the recruits ask about is, what is your NIL package? And a lot of times they lose out on recruits if you don't have a good NIL package available. And then his take, much like Gino Auriemma's, was like, listen, if we're going to pay the players and we're saying, yeah, this is what we're doing, and it's sort of like semi-pro, if you like, then these guys want the ability to cut players and say, hey, all right, well, you're not giving me much. This is professional. Yeah, we're just going to cut you. Or, hey, I'll trade you to USC to get this player or that player. And essentially, he and Oriema sort of made the case that the players are wanting their cake and ice cream, if you like. They want to be paid as professionals and sort of negotiate that, hey, I want NIL. What NIL package are you going to put together for me? But then at the same time, it's all on the schools, and they don't get any assurances from the player at all. So if the player says that they don't, or the player can complain and just transfer straight out and leave their agreement straight away, and the schools are left holding the bag, and it's all on the schools, and it's a very unfair system.
Well, I think it's just in effect for 2 weeks, right? Right now, it's a temporary restraining order. I don't know. I don't care. I mean, transfer as many times as you want. Transfer mid-year for all I give a shit. I mean, let them do what they want. Okay, but then reality is going to come back. Turn them into professionals if they want to. But then when you walk in your locker and you've been cut, you've been fired, then I'm waiting to see, okay, how's that going to go about? Because if you want to get paid like a professional, and I'm all for it, that's fine. But then you might get fired too. And are you guys okay? Like, hey, you still have to be eligible to play, which I think should be the case. You are in college for an education. But hey, if I want to trade you at Christmas because I need another guard, if we're professionals, then I should be able to trade you. I'll throw in a rack of balls.
And I thought Gino Auriemma was stronger on this, and, he's to that old coach stage where he doesn't give a damn. He'll say whatever the hell he wants to say because he doesn't have much longer. Like, he knows he's towards the end of his career, saying, it's going to hurt coaches' salaries, and the players have all the control, and sort of bemoaned it to a certain degree. And then there were jokes about him, being fired because UConn had lost 3 games and all this. He's like, they can buy me out. That wouldn't be a bad deal now, would it? And that's the problem with this thing, is both Auriemma and Walz, they make poor spokesmen for this because the coaches get paid so much. So for them to sort of almost bemoan the overpayment of players when the top 10 coaches are all making over $2 million to $1 million. So from Mulkey, who's almost, I think, at $3 million, and then Auriemma that's at $2 million something, and Staley, and so on. The majority of them being white as well, with all the athletes being predominantly black. It's just a bad look with male self-entitled coaches, the majority of them complaining about the salary and pay structure, and them sort of dancing that line, which I find very interesting. I think they did okay and got away with it and didn't get in too much controversy. The other thing, if this rule sticks, the interesting thing I think moving forward will be, the players that have incidents. And, obviously, Rickea Jackson had an incident at Tennessee last year where she was suspended or something. They really didn't say. And I was really surprised when she didn't wind up going to the WNBA. So clearly they worked it out. But her options were either go to the WNBA or make it work with my coach at Tennessee. And they figured it out. I guess if you're old school, you'd say that's great. They figured out their problems. The coach wanted the player to work harder, and that's what we want. And yay. The obvious scenario that comes to my mind, and who the hell knows, but LSU and Angel Reese, because currently, I had it wrong in my last video, she actually sits at number 8 on the ESPN mock draft. The question would be, with her, like, she obviously took time away from the team. We don't really know. Mulkey won't say what it was. Truly, was it mental health issues or whatever? Or did she and Mulkey have ongoing issues? And if this rule sticks, would she go back in the portal and be the ultimate portal player? And then there are a lot of glam franchises she could go to besides LSU. I mean, would she make a big presence in going to like USC or something like that? I don't know. It's all speculation and based on nothing. I know LSU fan will tell me how good their NIL is, and you're damn right it is, and they make a lot of money. But I'm just curious with her because I figure she feels like she's her own entity and probably knows that she can do better one more year in college than versus going to the WNBA, I would suggest. So I'm curious to see if the rule changes, and then that really shifts the power after, if you have that sort of older player that gets into an issue and already used up their transfer, like an Angel Reese, will that wind up in them transferring somewhere else? One other thing that Walls mentioned, which I found interesting, he thinks actually the transfer portal will actually settle down, as a lot of this was generated by the extra COVID year, and this is the last of the COVID kids, so you really only have 4 years. I'm not so sure. I can see kids, if it turns into you can transfer where you want, I could see this sort of going like free agency. And if you have an above average year like Anissa Morrow, then you go on the market to try to figure out, hey, where's my best NIL opportunity and where can I score money? Almost, I think some kids are definitely going to do that. And I really don't have much problem with that, to be quite honest. That's what the coaches do. They work their way up. Oh, I go to a mid-major. Oh, then I can go to a major and get more money. And then I can go to this elite school and get more and more money. So it's the way the world works. Everybody wants a little bit more. So it's not surprising to me that the players want more. Anyway, your thoughts, your poison. Do you think this multi-transfer rule will stick? And do you think it'll have a big impact or not? Thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you next time. Good night.